Why doesn't anyone know about this? This is really, I mean,
The question comes up, why don't more of us know about this? And the reality is that in terms of the scientific record, this is really new. This is very new. We've really only known about it for 5, 6, 7 years.
Well,
and
I mean, 1980 is when...
Well, we may have known about it earlier, but in terms of it beginning to get out there as part of the scientific literature, I would say 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
2002, 2003, 2004 is when this was starting to get out there. Because of people like Chris Langdon at the University of Miami, because of Dr. Victoria Fabry, at that time at the California College at San Marcos, and Dr. Richard Feely with NOAA, Pacific Northwest, and University of Washington, and Scott Doney at Woods Hole. These 4 people were big players, at least in the United States, probably on a global scale. So in terms of the scientific record, this is relatively new and recent. And why haven't people picked up on it? This is conjecture on my part, but my feeling is it's been buried in all the controversy around global warming, and while I'm sure it's the last thing he intended, in many ways Al Gore's film, An Inconvenient Truth, I think gained the support and opened the eyes of so many people, and it created anger in so many others. And when we started making this film, Barbara spent a lot of time listening to people talk about that movie. And for so many people, it was really a film about graphs and charts and Al Gore, and less about the issues. So we made
in
a very
our country, I don't think abroad. I don't
we made
think
a
it was
very
the same
conscious
thing.
effort
that's so
to
interesting.
Partisan.
make a film that had no graphs.
Right.
I think we slipped one in, but that was unintentional. And one in which the science was straightforward, and in which people never had a finger pointed at them, and they weren't lectured at.
And science came from the scientists.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't us interpreting what the scientists were saying. It was the scientists speaking for themselves. So hard to argue that.
Right. That's so interesting from a communication standpoint, because I never thought about the film that way. I saw it and I was like, oh, great, brilliant, thank you for all the information right out there so I can see it.
Yes.
But I was
so
open to it, so it didn't occur to me that it was...
Exactly, that it could get so mired in controversy, which it really did. I mean, to a degree, when we have screenings now for more conservative groups, we'll have people raise their hands, not knowing what persuasion we are, and say, thank you so much for not making an inconvenient truth. Thank you for not exaggerating the science. And that's the one thing that Al Gore has been accused of time and time again, is exaggerating the science, which he did do, unfortunately.
Right,
But to make his... Exactly. And I think the science is not as clear as ocean acidification science either, so it's easier to approximate in ocean acidification than it is in global warming.
So going back to that point, I think that film did many extraordinary things, but one of the byproducts was this cloud of controversy that came in its wake, and I think that buried or made it harder for the ocean acidification message to begin to be formulated and get out. And I think that when Barbara decided we would reach out to the scientists, a handful of scientists that we found when we started following up on Elizabeth's article, what we found in the scientists was this, thank God you're here. We've been looking for you. I thought they were extraordinarily trusting in sort of taking our measure in a few hours and deciding we could do this. I was a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably the same is true for them. I mean, that someone comes along that says, we really believe what you're saying and we're really concerned. Yeah, I mean, I think that's...
And, there was the reason that Barbara asked me to do this, because, this was my world. I grew up in a fish market in Oslo.
Right.
We went off to the world of fish in Alaska, and then moved from there to the Norwegian American fishing community in Seattle. So the world of fish, that for me was just, that was the world. And things that are happening up in Alaska now, decreases in salmon runs. Now we have issues in Washington State with trying to raise oysters because the spat can't survive, and they suspect that this may be related to ocean acidification matters. In other words, it's not that the adult calcifying organisms are so affected, it's the ones trying to grow that are affected because they can't readily enough get the calcium carbonate they fear. But one of the things we've become so respectful of here is how hard it is to isolate the variables in such a way you could say that something is happening because of a certain phenomenon. But we're delighted to be here because many of these scientists we worked with are going to be here the next 10 days. So
Good.
We're going to be working with them and seeing them.
Are they going to be in the Bell Center, or are they going to be
Yeah.
everywhere else? Or
Everywhere
both?
else is
And
not
everywhere else.
circulating, yeah.
Okay.
A number of them are going to be participating on the panel discussions that we have after our screenings.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and that adds an enormous amount to the screenings. It's great.
Yeah.
And it'd be very easy if you were interested in, wanting to talk with one of them about the question of why it's so important.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would be happy to speak with you.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to introduce them to you
Okay.
if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.